Yellowstone National Park continues to be a hotbed of strange supernatural sightings. Maybe it's because it is one of the largest and most visited national parks, creating a disturbing food source for these things. And after hearing today's stories, well, you probably won't disagree. Anyway, let's begin. Secrets of the Woods. It was supposed to be just a fun camping trip with friends up in Yellowstone National Park last summer. We had been looking forward to it for months, a chance to get away from it all and immerse ourselves in nature. Little did we know the terrifying experience that awaited us in those remote wilderness areas. On our second night camping near Yellowstone Lake, everything seemed perfect at first. The sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges as the day gave way to night. We sat around the campfire, roasting marshmallows and telling stories as the sounds of birds and insects provided the soundtrack. But I couldn't shake this nagging feeling that we were being watched by something out there in the trees. Then it happened. A blood-curdling scream ripped through the calm of the night. It froze us all in our tracks. The sound defied description, like a human cry mixed with an animal's howl. We had never heard anything like it before. Before we could even process what was happening, the scream came again, louder and closer this time. It seemed to be coming from the direction of the lake. With our flashlights in hand, we cautiously made our way down to the shoreline, scanning the darkness for any sign of movement. That's when I noticed them. Massive footprints in the sand, easily twice as big as a human's, with long, claw-like toes. A bear? A mountain lion? But even as I grasped for rational explanations, I knew deep down this was something altogether different. We followed the disturbing trail deeper into the woods until the footprints just disappeared after those harrowing screams, and it felt just as unsettling. As we debated turning back, that's when IT emerged from the shadows. Humanoid in shape but grotesquely massive, with sickly gray, rough, leathery skin like an elephant's hide. But most disturbing of all was its face, if you could even call it that. There were no eyes, no nose, no mouth, just a featureless, smooth expanse where its face should have been. The creature unleashed another deafening scream and charged at us with alarming speed. We ran for our lives, crashing blindly through the forest back towards our campsite, its thunderous footsteps and hot breath right behind us. If not for my friend Mike's quick thinking to hurl a rock at its head, I'm certain that thing would have been on us. We made it back to the camp by sheer adrenaline and luck, throwing our gear into the cars and peeling out of there, driving until we were miles away from the park. I don't think any of us said a word the entire time, too shaken by what we had witnessed. In the weeks and months after, I became obsessed with trying to find some explanation, some rational context for what we saw that night. Through my research, I discovered we were far from the first to have encountered these bizarre, featureless humanoid beings in remote areas of our national parks and forests. Reports of similar sightings go back decades from all across the country. Some of the more fringe theories claim these entities could be extraterrestrial in origin, strange visitors studying our world for reasons unknown. While that seems far-fetched, I can say with certainty that what we saw that night in Yellowstone was no bear, no man in a suit. It was something else entirely. A true cryptid. The experience has shaken me to my core and made me question so much about what I think I know about this world and our place in it. I can only hope that by sharing this account, I can find others who have had similar run-ins and maybe, finally, get some answers. There is power in these stories, and every new one helps weave a more complete tapestry of the truth behind whatever these beings are. We must continue investigating and collecting evidence so that one day we can unravel this mystery of the shadowed ones that walk among us. My brother and I had a really bizarre and unsettling experience while hiking deep in the backcountry of Yellowstone National Park a few years ago. We were miles away from any trails or campsites, completely isolated in a remote area of the park. As we came through a clearing in the forest, we suddenly noticed this strange rippling effect in the air, kind of like a mirage you'd see in the desert heat. The air seemed to be shimmering and distorting right in front of us. We stopped dead in our tracks. The rippling lasted maybe 15 seconds before it disappeared, but right after that happened, we were hit with this intense wave of static electricity. It made the hair on our arms and heads stand straight up, and our skin started tingling intensely. At the same time, we were suddenly overcome with flu-like symptoms: nausea, dizziness, pounding headaches. It came out of nowhere and hit us both at the same time. We had to sit down and rest for a bit, hoping whatever was causing it would pass. As we were resting, that's when we noticed the really creepy and unsettling thing: an area of the forest nearby that was completely darkened, like a patch of pure blackness had materialized among the trees. It sounds weird, but it was like there was just this void of darkness in the middle of the woods, even though it was a sunny day and there was nothing blocking the light in that spot. The longer we looked at it, the more uneasy we became. There was just this really sinister, evil feeling emanating from that dark area that put us both on edge. I've spent a ton of time outdoors and have never felt anything like the sense of malice and danger that seemed to be coming from that shadowy spot in the forest. I know it sounds crazy, but we both had this overwhelming instinct that we needed to get away from there as fast as possible. Whatever was causing that darkness, we didn't want to stick around and find out. So we booked it out of there, hiking as quickly as we could to put distance between us and that creepy spot. The whole way out, we kept looking over our shoulders, half expecting something to come out of the woods after us. We were pretty rattled. That night at our campsite, neither of us could really sleep. We kept hearing noises that made us think something was out there. It was one of the most stressful nights I've ever had camping. In the days and weeks after, we tried to rationalize what had happened, but nothing could really explain it. The rippling air effect, the sudden blast of static electricity, the flu symptoms hitting out of nowhere, and especially that sinister patch of darkness. It all defied logical explanation. My brother even did some research online about strange occurrences and phenomena in Yellowstone, and came across some accounts from other people who claim to have had similarly weird experiences in the park's backcountry involving strange lights, apparitions, you name it, creepy X-Files type stuff. To this day, years later, we still have no idea what we encountered out there. All I know is that it was one of the most inexplicable and terrifying experiences of my life. I'm usually pretty skeptical of paranormal stuff, but there's just no normal explanation for what we saw and felt. We've been back to Yellowstone since then, but we make sure to steer well clear of that particular area. I have zero desire to go anywhere near that place again and subject myself to whatever kind of evil presence lingers there. I know it all sounds totally crazy, but I swear it's the absolute truth of what happened to us. If you've had any similar experiences in really remote wilderness areas or have any insights, I'm all ears, because that day still haunts me, and I'll never be able to unsee that patch of pure, malevolent darkness in the forest. Let me tell you about this absolutely mind-boggling experience I had while camping in Yellowstone last August. Me and my buddy Jake found ourselves deep in the backcountry, miles away from any established campsites or trails. We pitched our tents in a secluded valley, nestled among towering lodgepole pines and fragrant sagebrush. As the sun began its descent, we found ourselves gathered around a crackling fire. Out of nowhere, a thunderous explosion shattered the tranquility of the air. It seemed as though a fighter jet had just shattered the sound barrier directly above. We were both startled beyond belief. Jake mentioned that the sound reminded him of the sonic booms he would often hear during his childhood near an Air Force base in California. However, it was completely illogical in such a remote and desolate location. We searched the evening sky diligently, yet no planes, contrails, or any other plausible explanations came into view. I was overcome by an unsettling and eerie sensation that is difficult to articulate. The loud noise had subsided, yet its eerie presence seemed to linger in the surrounding scenery. The atmosphere was filled with an eerie silence, as if the birds and insects had suddenly ceased their usual chatter. The atmosphere was eerily calm. I had a strong, instinctual feeling that we were out of place, as if we had stumbled upon something we had no right to witness. It brought to mind the recollection of a ranger's story I came across during my research for the trip. In 2000, this ranger experienced a similar gut feeling after hearing a mysterious boom in a secluded part of the park. Jake also felt quite uneasy. He constantly glanced behind him, his hand nervously rubbing the back of his neck. We conducted a brief search of the area as a precautionary measure, yet found nothing. There were no indications of an explosion, no remnants, no trace whatsoever of what might have triggered it, except for our racing hearts and the chills running down our arms. As the sun began to set, we found ourselves contemplating whether it would be more sensible to trek back to the car and find a cozy hotel for the night, rather than enduring the elements. However, the journey was quite extensive, and it's safe to say that both of us were apprehensive about venturing through the woods at night following that experience. Ultimately, we decided to share a tent, ensuring that the bear spray was easily accessible and endured a restless night, constantly alert for any unusual sounds. I thought I heard some rustling and snapping twigs at some point, but it was so dark that I couldn't see a thing. I was so relieved when dawn finally broke. I'm still at a loss for words when it comes to what we experienced on that particular day. Perhaps it could be attributed to an unusual occurrence in nature, or the possibility of military aircraft deviating from their intended path. In that moment, it felt as if there was something seriously amiss about that place, something almost otherworldly. Have any of you ever come across a similar situation before? I'm genuinely interested to hear if others have had a similar experience. Without a doubt, it was one of the most bizarre and unnerving experiences I've ever had in the great outdoors. Thank you for taking the time to read this. If you have any insights, I would greatly appreciate hearing them. Thank you for taking the time to share these intriguing stories, even if they lack a definitive explanation. Allow me to begin by stating that the following account I am about to share is nothing short of the absolute truth. Last summer, during our camping trip in Yellowstone, my girlfriend and I experienced something that will forever haunt me. On that cold August evening, Jess and I found ourselves deep in the backcountry, far away from any signs of civilization. We had meticulously set up our tent, ensuring that we were well prepared for the night ahead. After our satisfying meal by the campfire, as we were preparing to retire for the night, an unusual humming noise caught our attention, emanating from beyond the tree line. As thoughts flow freely, I found myself immersed in a captivating moment. Initially, my assumption leaned towards a typical tourist's drone, aimlessly hovering around the park. However, as it gradually approached, a peculiar realization dawned upon me. This was no ordinary sight. Jess tightly gripped my arm, her eyes filled with terror, as a massive black triangular craft suddenly appeared above the towering pines, hovering just about 100 feet above the ground. The object was massive, spanning a distance of at least 50 feet, and emitted an unsettling humming noise as the object flew directly above. A powerful beam of light emanated from its core, illuminating the forest floor in a haunting manner. And lo and behold, there they were. 3 small bald figures appeared from the shadows near the clearing, making their way towards the light with their short legs. It's quite perplexing to find a suitable term for them, as they definitely did not possess any human-like qualities. Their complexion appeared rather pallid and had a somewhat moist texture, reminiscent of a toad's. Their faces, if you could even call them that, were absolutely dreadful. The creatures displayed a striking feature: a large black eye positioned prominently in the middle of their round heads, accompanied by a mouth devoid of lips, but filled with sharp, needle-like teeth, forming a chilling grin. We stood there as the beam of light illuminated the creatures, causing their skin to shimmer in the darkness. And just like that, the mysterious craft disappeared, as if it had never existed, leaving nothing but questions in its wake. As we stood there, our eyes were fixated on the 3 creatures in the clearing. To our dismay, 2 of them started making their way towards our tent, their movements appearing strange and unnatural. Meanwhile, the 3rd creature remained on the outskirts, barely visible in the diminishing glow of the beam. I can't quite explain the sudden surge of emotions that overwhelmed me in that moment. As if fueled by pure adrenaline or a primal instinct for survival, I swiftly seized Jess, and together we sprinted through the dense woods, paying no mind to the branches that left stinging marks on our faces or the sharp stones that mercilessly battered our bare feet. It felt as though those creatures were right on our heels, their sharp claws tearing through the foliage. After an arduous journey that seemed to stretch on endlessly, we finally reached the ranger station, completely overwhelmed and utterly drained. Attempting to convey our observations to the rangers proved to be quite the challenge, as it became evident that our words were met with skepticism. They must have assumed we had consumed questionable mushrooms or something. After witnessing what I experienced, the night sky has forever changed for me. It's unsettling to realize that we are not alone, and that there are inexplicable entities lurking in the shadows of our world. After that unforgettable night, I've been tirelessly searching the depths of the internet, meticulously combing through various forums and websites in a relentless pursuit of similar tales. And lo and behold, amidst the vast expanse of information, I stumbled upon a handful of sporadic narratives detailing UFO sightings and mysterious encounters with cryptids within the confines of our beloved national parks. Sharing this now, hoping to encourage others who have had similar experiences to come forward and collectively make sense of it all. There is a profound realization that the truth lies beyond our comprehension, lurking in the shadows, ready to unleash its terror upon us. Prepare yourself for a lengthy read as I delve into my experience as a guide in Yellowstone National Park back in 2006. After spending several summers at the park, I believed I had experienced all there was to see. Wow, I couldn't have been more mistaken. On a beautiful September morning, I found myself guiding a group of hikers through the stunning backcountry near the Lamar Valley. Early in the morning, we embarked on our journey to witness the majestic elk during their rutting season. As thoughts flowed freely, the atmosphere resonated with the melancholic bugles, while the geysers in the distance emitted wisps of steam. As I basked in the warm sunshine, I couldn't help but feel that this day in the park was absolutely perfect. While traversing the ridge, my attention was immediately drawn to an intriguing sight nestled in the valley below. Initially, I considered the possibility of it being a bison or an elk, but upon further observation, it became increasingly perplexing. As I observed the creature, I couldn't help but notice its peculiar way of walking on two legs. It had a rather unique and somewhat clumsy gait. The creature had a thick, shaggy coat of dark brown fur, and its arms appeared unusually elongated. I gestured for the group to halt and retrieved my binoculars. What I witnessed through the lenses left me breathless. I was completely taken aback by the creature's face, as it was unlike anything I had ever seen before. The creature possessed a noticeable brow ridge, a nose that lacked definition, and a perpetually snarling mouth. The eyes of the creature were deep and mysterious, as if they possessed a keen intellect, carefully observing the valley below. Observing the scene, I noticed the creature come to a halt and take a moment to inhale the surrounding air. After that, a deep, menacing growl escaped its throat, causing a chill to run down my back. The sound was reminiscent of a hybrid creature, blending the characteristics of a bear and a human, yet possessing a deeper and more primal resonance. As the sound reverberated through the valley, a sense of fear washed over the hikers in my group, their eyes filled with a mix of astonishment and terror. I've had quite a few encounters with bears in the park, some of which were rather close. However, this situation had a unique quality to it. It was truly unsettling to witness the creature's eerie movements, the piercing intelligence in its gaze, and the unearthly sound it emitted. It felt as though I had been transported into a chilling nightmare. There was this undeniable sense that we were witnessing something truly remarkable. As we observed the scene unfold before our eyes, the majestic creature gracefully resumed its journey, disappearing into the lush foliage at the periphery of the valley. I kept my gaze fixed on it through my binoculars, watching intently as it vanished from sight. There was a part of me that couldn't help but anticipate the possibility of it suddenly changing direction and rushing towards us. However, it never happened. After its departure, I shifted my attention towards the group, attempting to downplay the encounter as a mere encounter with an unconventional bear. However, it was evident that they were not convinced. Others had witnessed the same phenomenon and were aware of its deeper significance. After completing the hike, we found ourselves in a state of quiet contemplation, our minds consumed by various reflections. After returning to the visitor center, I dutifully reported the sighting to the park rangers, only to be met with dismissive laughter. "It's most likely just a grizzly with mange," they casually dismissed. However, I had a different perspective. During my extensive time in the wilderness, I've had the opportunity to witness a multitude of peculiar occurrences. However, there is truly nothing that can compare to the breathtaking sight I witnessed in Yellowstone on that fateful day. Attempting to make sense of it all, I've endeavored to find a rational and logical explanation. However, I personally believe that there isn't a definitive answer to this question. Based on my observations, it is clear that the creature I witnessed was unlike any bear or animal I have ever come across. It was truly a phenomenon that defied our comprehension of the natural world. Is it possible that it's still out there, hidden in the depths of the park, patiently biding its time until it resurfaces? Ever since that fateful day, I've delved deep into the annals of Bigfoot sightings in the vicinity. It appears that others have also witnessed peculiar occurrences in Yellowstone. Throughout the years, numerous accounts have surfaced, recounting the encounters of hikers and campers with inexplicable creatures. There are those who dismiss these stories as mere fabrications, attributing them to individuals with vivid imaginations and an abundance of free time spent in nature. However, I am more knowledgeable on the subject. Witnessing it firsthand was an unforgettable experience. Occasionally, while venturing into the backcountry, an indescribable sensation creeps over me, as if I am being observed. It's fascinating how this feeling lingers, serving as a constant reminder of the vast amount of knowledge that eludes us regarding the world we inhabit. It's both terrifying and incredibly fascinating to me. Contemplating the existence of creatures like the one I witnessed that day opens up a world of possibilities. It makes you wonder what other extraordinary beings might be lurking in the unknown, just waiting to be unveiled. Sharing this story has always been a rare occurrence for me, limited to only a select few within the Park Service. It's crucial to share this perspective and remind others that there are still unexplained mysteries in our world. Perhaps in the future, the answers will reveal themselves. Perhaps we will stumble upon evidence supporting the existence of creatures like Bigfoot. However, until that moment arrives, it is imperative that we maintain a receptive mindset and continue our relentless pursuit of discovering the untamed corners of our planet. Exploring the vast expanse of the world, one can never predict the hidden wonders that lie in wait. In conclusion, that sums up my narrative. Consider this, if you will. If you happen to find yourself in Yellowstone and come across something peculiar in the backcountry, it might be worth giving it some consideration. Believe me, there are phenomena that simply cannot be explained. After witnessing those moments, your perspective on the world will be forever altered. Last summer, during my solo camping trip in Yellowstone National Park, something unforgettable occurred. As I ventured into the backcountry, my excitement grew, fueled by the prospect of immersing myself in the raw beauty of the untamed wilderness. As I found the perfect spot to set up camp near a bubbling hot spring, I couldn't help but feel a sense of tranquility. The night was filled with the enchanting calls of coyotes in the distance, creating an eerie yet captivating ambience. I woke up suddenly, my heart racing, unsure of the time. As I sat by the dwindling flames of my campfire, the dancing shadows of the lodgepole pines captivated my attention. As I found myself immersed in the depths of silence, a voice emerged from the shadows, beckoning me with a familiarity that matched the rhythm of my own breath. It whispered with a hoarse voice. The sound was an uncanny resemblance to my late grandfather, who lost his battle with lung cancer a decade ago. I shouted, my voice trembling. A moment of quiet. And suddenly, out of nowhere, the figure appeared from the dense foliage. The sight before me was truly awe-inspiring. A colossal dark entity that seemed to swallow the very essence of the night. Its eyes, glowing like fiery embers, pierced through the darkness. As it approached, its mouth opened, exposing its razor-sharp teeth, and it spoke once more in my grandfather's voice. "Sammy boy, come with me. We have a lot to talk about." I quickly jumped to my feet, feeling a rush of excitement, and reached for my flashlight. As I directed my beam towards the mysterious figure, it inexplicably disappeared into thin air, a desolate expanse of untamed wilderness permeated by the pungent odor of the steaming hot springs. That night was a sleepless one for me. With the fire crackling and my trusty hunting knife at the ready, I found myself pondering my own sanity. As the sun rose, I efficiently packed up my belongings and swiftly hiked back to civilization. During my numerous nights in the woods, I've encountered various situations. I began to receive accounts from fellow campers and hikers about unsettling encounters with mysterious apparitions that eerily mimicked the voices of their departed loved ones. There was a girl from Idaho who made a rather intriguing claim about seeing an apparition with her deceased mother's face. An ex-Marine recounted a haunting encounter where he heard a voice that sounded eerily similar to his fallen comrade, a dear friend who tragically lost his life alongside him in the war-torn streets of Fallujah. It's hard to ignore the overwhelming number of similarities and witnesses that make it difficult to dismiss this as mere coincidence or a collective hallucination. There is a mysterious presence lurking in the untamed corners of our world, capable of manifesting as our most profound sorrows. I haven't gone camping since that night, and I don't plan to anytime soon. No shame in that. Putting these words on paper sends tremors through my hands. Sharing this story has been weighing heavily on my mind, as the haunting image of my grandfather's face on that object continues to plague my dreams, his eerie smile and gestures etched into my memory. It's important to me that I share this message to ensure the safety of others. I vividly remember a deeply unsettling experience my wife Jenna and I had while camping in the backcountry of Yellowstone in June 2003. We were avid outdoors people who had visited the park many times before, but nothing could have prepared us for the events of that third night deep in the wilderness near the Lamar River. It must have been around 2 a.m. when I was jolted awake by the most grating, unearthly screeching sounds coming from the woods nearby our tent. At first, I thought maybe it was an elk bugling in the distance, but this noise was much more guttural and almost metallic in its tone. Jenna remained fast asleep. That woman could sleep through a hurricane, but the eerie shrieks immediately set me on edge, making the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I unzipped the tent and shone my flashlight out into the inky darkness, which caused the screeching to immediately cease. However, I then noticed a large, shadowy figure moving erratically just beyond the reach of my light beam, circling our campsite. From its bipedal movement, I could tell it was some sort of upright creature, but the way it moved was jerky and unnatural, unlike anything I'd seen in these woods before. My heart was pounding as I gripped the flashlight, straining my eyes into the night. That's when it emerged from the tree line across the small clearing from our tent, about 20 yards away, hunched over, but clearly the size of a person. Under the moonlight, I could make out its disturbing features: a bulbous head, dark leathery skin, long spindly arms that hung down past its knees. But the face, I'll never forget that face. Those large almond-shaped eyes reflected the light in an eerie silver glow. It had no discernible nose, just a gash for a mouth that opened, letting out another one of those blood-curdling shrieks, revealing what looked like a forked tongue. I was absolutely terrified, rooted in place. I quickly ducked back inside and zipped up the tent, hands trembling as I clutched my maglite like a weapon. For what felt like hours, I heard the creature pacing around our campsite, those gurgling screeches sometimes moving frighteningly close before receding again into the distance. But it never approached the tent directly. As soon as it was daylight, I ventured out to look for any signs of what I had witnessed. That's when I found a series of deep, three-toed tracks sunken into the muddy riverbank, as if made by something extremely heavy. There were also tufts of coarse black hair snagged in the brambles nearby. I bagged some of the hair, not even sure who I would show it to, but knowing I needed some kind of evidence of the encounter. When Jenna awoke, I didn't say anything at first about the events of that night, but she could obviously tell something had badly shaken me. I was an absolute wreck, jumpy and on edge for the rest of our camping trip. In the years since, I've read other accounts of people encountering strange, inexplicable creatures in the remote areas of Yellowstone. Jenna thinks I must have just seen a bear and my mind played tricks on me. But I know what I saw. It was definitely humanoid, but absolutely not human. Those dead silver eyes cutting through the darkness are seared into my memory, filling me with visceral dread even now as I recount that incident. I've hiked back to that same campsite a few times since, almost daring the creature to reveal itself again so I can somehow gain an explanation. But the forest has remained still and quiet, keeping its secrets. Part of me hopes that I somehow imagined the whole thing in a half-awake state, but the physical evidence of the tracks and hair, along with the chilling memories, are evidence that something unidentified and unnatural roams those woods. Whatever it was, I'm certain I had a brush with the unknown that night, an encounter that shook me to my core. It was supposed to be just a simple solo hiking trip through Yellowstone National Park. I had been looking forward to it for weeks, a chance to get away from the stresses of everyday life and immerse myself in nature's majesty. Little did I know that this excursion would end up changing my entire perspective on reality itself. The first few hours on the trail were pure bliss. The crisp mountain air, the dappled sunlight filtering through the towering pines, the peaceful sounds of the forest surrounding me. It was exactly the rejuvenating experience I had hoped for. But then, something odd happened. A sound, low and guttural, like nothing I had ever heard before. It reverberated through the trees. I froze, senses on high alert, scanning the area for any sign of what could have made that unearthly growl. That's when I caught a glimpse of movement out of the corner of my eye. Just a fleeting shadow, darting between the trunks with unnatural speed and agility. My heart began pounding in my chest as my mind raced to make sense of what I had just witnessed. Shaken but trying to rationalize it as likely just a bear or other woodland creature, I pressed on. But the further I hiked, the more an inescapable feeling of dread and unease settled over me, like I was being watched by some unseen presence. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end as I noticed something even stranger, a series of large, perfectly circular burns marring the bark of several trees along the trail. They were roughly the size of dinner plates with strangely symmetrical patterns, unlike anything I could attribute to a natural cause. A conversation with a park ranger a couple days prior suddenly came flooding back. He had mentioned the rumors and legends surrounding this particular area of intense, high strangeness activity, alleged UFO sightings, cases of inexplicable missing time, and even claims of people encountering otherworldly entities in these woods. At the time, I had dismissed it as nothing more than fanciful folklore and campfire tales meant to spook the guests. But now, confronted with such bizarre phenomena firsthand, I couldn't help but wonder if there was some kernel of truth underlying the stories. As the day wore on, the feelings of being watched and an overall sense of wrongness only intensified. Every snapping twig or rustling bush caused me to start, imagining some strange creature observing me just beyond my field of vision. The once peaceful forest had taken on a dark, sinister vibe that made my skin crawl. One moment the sun was high overhead, the next it was already starting to dip below the horizon. I had completely lost track of time, with no recollection of stopping to rest, eat, or set up camp for the night. It was as if my memory had been wiped, leaving only a disorienting haze and confusion in its place. When I finally stumbled back to my car well after nightfall, I was stunned to find that over 24 hours had elapsed since I had set out that morning. An entire day had been lost to whatever trance-like state I had been in out there in the woods. My mind was swimming with questions. What had happened to me? What could possibly explain the strange phenomena I had experienced? Over the following days and weeks, I became almost obsessively driven to find answers. I scoured the internet, reaching out to online communities dedicated to the unusual and unexplained. To my surprise, I discovered that I was far from alone in my encounter. Scores of other hikers and outdoor enthusiasts had reported eerily similar events in that very same region of Yellowstone. The strange sounds, the high-speed moving shadows or figures, the baffling time lapses and memory gaps. Some even claim to have witnessed unearthly lights in the sky or humanoid shapes with glowing eyes observing them from the forest. A few of the most far-out accounts even alleged being temporarily abducted or experimented on by these unknown entities before being returned, with no recollection of what had occurred. And so, with that said, now that you guys have made it this far into the episode, I want you to all comment down below Yellowstone horror, so that way I know who made it to the end and who didn't. And if you guys enjoy stories like this where we go into first and second-hand accounts of the mysterious, the unexplained, the paranormal, not just international forests and national parks, but everywhere, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button for more content just like this, and I will see you guys in tomorrow's episode.